now, though, we're getting into the Pmrc radio program, that is the Policy Monitoring and Research Center. And with me in the studio, I have Albert Kasoma, who's a researcher. Today, we're looking at the revised Public Finance Management Act of 2018. It's a very good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
All right, Albert, how is the morning so far?
The morning is okay.
All right.
I was enjoying your music.
And we've got plenty more where that is coming from. All right. Now, our discussion today, we're looking at the revised Public Finance Management Act of 2018. But perhaps before we even get into that, could you define for us what is public finance management?
Thank you very much, moderator, for that question. Indeed, it is important that, first of all, we understand what public finance management before we go into the details of the program. So public finance management makes reference to a set of laws, rules, processes, procedures that govern the mobilization as well as the expenditure of public funds. So in our country setup, from the revenue mobilization side, we have the Zambia Revenue Authority, and to that effect, there's an act that actually spells out how the mobilization is supposed to be done. Then on the expenditure side, of course, there are many other laws and regulations, and one of such important law is the Public Finance Management Act, which was revised in 2018. So, of course, in a nutshell, I think the Act really sets in motion the institutional and the regulatory framework for the management of public funds. It also advocates for strengthened accountability for funds, the oversight, the overall oversight. It also stipulates on how controlling officers needs to really conduct themselves in the management of the public funds, as well as the efficient production of financial reports for various government institutions and for the Republic. At this moment, maybe I can also just maybe highlight a few points really that led probably to this revision. Of course, you know, there's been a public outcry from the general citizenry, the politicians themselves, civil society, that the law was not had some gaps in terms of having portions to handle cases of financial misconduct. And you may wish to know that in 2016, the Republican Constitution was also amended, and government itself, I think, just realized that it was about time to really revise the Public Finance Act. Besides the fact that because of the reforms that were going on, it introduced some requirements that needed legal backing. So in the process, the Public Finance Act of 2004 was revised, and the Public Financial Management Act Commencement Order was gazetted and published on 30th of May 2018.
Okay. Now, what are some of the noticeable features of the Act?
Okay. Thank you very much, moderator, for that question. Amongst the many noticeable features of the Public Finance Act is the structural adjustments that were made to the Office of the Accountant General and the Controller of Internal Audit. So these officers were upgraded from the level of a permanent secretary, from a lower level to a level of a permanent secretary. Of course, the intention is really to ensure that there's smooth communication between their peers who are controlling officers in ministries and other government departments, so that financial information can flow easily to these officers. The Act has also got embedded provision that facilitates the effective operation of the Treasury Single Account and the Integrated Financial Management Information Systems. So Treasury Single Account basically we're just talking about a unified government bank account, or like the IMF has defined it, it's just a set of accounts, bank accounts that are interlinked, so that government resources can be viewed as one consolidated fund. So those provisions have now been supported in the revised Public Finance Act. The Integrated Financial Management, of course, was introduced in 2017 before the Act came in 2018. So it also needed some legal backing. So an Integrated Financial Management Information System, in short, IFMIS, is just basically a software suite that integrates various components such as procurement, the budgeting, financial reporting, as well as payment processing into one software suite, so that no government institution is allowed to spend outside the system. So this system is very important to ensure that there's proper or prudent utilization of public resources. The other noticeable feature in the revised Public Finance Act is the fact that now board members of state-owned enterprises and statutory bodies are individually accountable for their decisions. This is aimed at improving the levels of decision morality, transparency, accountability, and integrity. The revised Public Finance Act also has a noticeable feature which deals with the Secretary to the Treasury being able to set revenue targets for ministries, provinces, and other spending agencies. We also note that there were some omissions in the previous Act in terms of the rules with regard to the management and disposal of public assets and stores. So in this Act, this has now been taken care of.
Okay. All right. Well, this is, of course, the PMRC radio show, and we are looking at the revised Public Finance Management Act of 2018. With me in the studio, help me discuss this, is Albert Kasoma, who's a researcher. Now, what are some of the offenses highlighted in the Act?
All right. Anyway, as regards the offenses that have been highlighted, there are several, but I think we can look at a few that are also noticeable in the Act. You definitely agree with me that previously there were issues of, if you look at the current Auditor General's report on the performance of the parastatals, there were indications that some of them failed to prepare financial statements. So it is now an offense, explicitly stated in this Public Finance Act, that it is an offense to fail to produce financial reports. The other offense that is also noticeable is a failure or omission to pay any public money into a public or official bank account. We've had instances where people would open accounts and deposit money. After it accrues interest, then the interest is used for personal gain. So this has also been highlighted as being an offense. The Act also talks about offenses related to unauthorized expenditures or unauthorized commitment. So in the Act now, it is explicitly stated that it is an offense to actually make the government incur excess expenditure. Mm-hmm. Time and again, we have realized the fact that there is always a supplementary budget that is taken to Parliament because of the excesses in expenditure. The other offence that is also noticeable is a failure to give access to public finance to Auditor General's officials to have access to financial records. It is actually an offense. It is now explicitly stated that anyone who alters or gives out electronic form of information to the public without prior consent from the authority, it is actually an offense. failure to keep proper records is also an offense. Year in, year out, we had instances of lost payment vouchers. We had instances of receipt books going missing. And the offenders were not brought to book. So in this act, it is now an offense actually to fail to secure records, amongst other offenses.
Okay. Now, key lessons from other countries. We usually learn from key lessons from other countries on public finance management. What have we learned?
Okay. As regards to the key lessons that we can pick from other countries, Kenya is a very good example for us. Kenya also revised their Public Finance Act in the year 2012, and subsequently they also introduced the Integrated Financial Management Information System. But of course, we have realized that with time, the IFMIS in Kenya has been at the center of loss of billions of shillings to fictitious companies and individuals who purportedly do business with government. The IFMIS in that country has been criticized for having weak controls. So various audits have revealed negligence on basic IFMIS security procedures. So even as we implement the IFMIS, and as an institution, as we advocate for the rollout of the integrated financial management systems to all government spending agencies, we need to be alive to the fact that security controls are very key, so that we are not found in a situation where fictitious companies and individuals start doing business with government. The system also had experienced a central control shutdown. If you remember very well, I think in last year, 2018, somewhere in January, the IFMIS system also crashed in this country. So it is important that we work around the network specifications so that we lessen on the system crashes. Another drawback, probably to the implementation of the IFMIS in Kenya, to support prudent use of resources through their Public Finance Management Act, has been poor training of staff, which resulted in fewer local authorities utilizing the IFMIS. So if you have to make any headways and ensure that IFMIS is properly utilized in this country, training is very key. So before we roll it out to other spending agencies, we need to ensure that we do the necessary training of staff. Okay. Then Kenya, also through their Public Finance Management Act, made provisions for all government financial reporting to be conducted according to the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. So these standards aim to improve the quality of financial reporting, leading to better informed assessment of the utilization of public resources. Botswana, through their revisions of the Public Finance Act, they actually made explicit provisions as regards to the management of debt. So the total debt and guarantees in Botswana are not expected to exceed 40% of GDP. So this is something that is explicitly stated in the Act. 20% is for internal debt. The other 20% is for external debt. Mm-hmm. The Zambian government, of course, has also made pronouncements. I think by the year 2017 there was a pronouncement, because we have a support regulation that support the Public Finance Act called the Loans and Guarantees Act. Mm-hmm. So there was an announcement that this act will be tabled in Parliament so that it can be reviewed to enhance transparency. So really, the intention is to ensure that Parliament has an oversight in terms of the loans that the country contracts. So 2 days ago, the Minister of Justice indicated that they will be issuing a ministerial statement on or the bills and the acts that will be taken to Parliament for review. So as an institution, our expectation is that the Loans and the Guarantees Act will be one of such acts that will be taken to Parliament in this session.
Okay. All right. Now, as we come to the conclusion of our interview today and our discussion on the revised Public Finance Management Act of 2018, what are some of the recommendations to enhance the implementation of the Act?
So just to maybe belabor some of the points that I've talked about, the Public Finance Act does not exist in isolation. So it has got some subsidiary legislation and other laws that it works that are needed to be in tandem with it for effective public management of resources. So as an institution, Pmrc, we've been advocating for besides what I'd mentioned on the review of the Loans and Guarantees Act, to ensure that every loan that is contracted by the state has the approval of Parliament. We have also been advocating for the review of the Public Procurement Act to ensure that we go the route of price benchmarking for routine government goods and services. Of late, of course, there have been issues of inflated the prices of goods and services. So the review of the Procurement Act will ensure that we benchmark the cost of routine goods and services for public procurement. The other recommendation that we are given as Pmrc is that to further support the Public Finance Management Act, government needs to expedite the process of developing code of conduct for civil servants. So there is need to reinforce the provision of the Public Finance Management Act by developing the code of conduct so that civil servants know how they're supposed to conduct themselves at a particular instance. Of course, I mentioned the need to roll out the integrated financial management to all spending agencies, including the councils. To prevent the IFMIS failure, government needs to improve the connectivity and infrastructure between the IFMIS servers hosted by Smart Zambia and the remote local area networks. So we understand that before this is rolled out, we need to improve the infrastructure in terms of connectivity.
Okay, definitely.
Then I also mentioned about the adoption of the international public sector accounting standards in Kenya to enhance financial accountability. So as a country, this is the route that we should be looking at, because the benefits, of course, cannot be overemphasized. So if we adopt this international standard of reporting in the public sector, it's easier now to assess the use of public funds. It's easier now to do the analysis and the ratios so that you can do cross-country analysis and comparatives within the region. Then we see how we are performing as a country in terms of the utilization of public funds.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been a discussion on the revised Public Finance Management Act of 2018, brought to you by the Policy Monitoring and Research Center. With me in the studio has been Albert Kasoma. Thank you very much for coming through this morning. Oh,
thank you very much. Just for the sake of our listeners, our physical address is 36C Sebo Road in Kabulonga. You can actually pay us a visit. Alternatively, you can visit us on a website. You can also find us on various social media platforms. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on Twitter. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.